Hi everyone, welcome to a happy cafe. Today we have another episode of the Soul Sync Saturday Chat with Dr. Alan Sheldrake from London, UK. We're so excited to have Alan with us. Alan is an engineer, a mathematician, and a doctor of philosophy. He has traveled and worked all over the world, and his life experiences are enhanced by people and cultures from all of the countries where he has traveled and worked. And today, besides his passion for Aikido, he shares with us a very important story of what his needs versus wants are and why that's important for all of us to be happy. So thank you for joining us and enjoy the show.
How it started, actually, the subject of needs and wants came about some years ago. Might have been about 4 years ago when I was in Bangalore.
Yes.
Harish invited me to attend a course of financial stuff with some postgraduates. And I was invited to give a little talk about basically my life. I hadn't had anything prepared, and so this subject of needs and wants came through about halfway through. It suddenly came to my head as a topic. So I started talking about needs and wants then, and that's the first time I've ever done it. And it's been a topic that Harish and I have sort of mulled over several times since.
Beautiful. We're lucky to be part of this conversation.
So, friends are rare diamonds. They're hard to find. And in some ways they're hard to keep. Because you may not see them very often. Maybe if years pass without seeing them. But usually when you're immediately back in their company, it's like going back yesterday. Everything falls into place. Sometimes you find new friends, say at work. I happen to, since I've been back in England since 2013, which was shortly after my wife died, I've been working in the same company ever since. And those, some of the people in the company, 2 or 3 of them, have become good friends. So that's my number one requirement, is good friends and people to look after. Second one on my list is good health. And it's a bit like you saying, feeding a plant. You give it nourishment, give it vitamins, all the things it needs at the right time. So I tend to eat very simple food, and I'm not a diet type of person. I'm a skinny fellow anyway. I put on weight. I was 62 kgs when I was 18, and when I came back from India, I was 58 because I lost weight looking after my wife. But now I'm somewhere about 68. But I eat very simple food, mostly cooked with water. Hardly ever use any fat, any oily things. Avoid that. And also, it's very important, I find, particularly as you get older, with memory issues and things like that, good foods provides good nourishment for the brain. And you have to keep your brain very healthy. A lot of people tend to, I think, ignore their brains. And therefore, I'm a bit of a freak in the sense that I do advanced mathematics pretty well every day. And I'm 76 years old, so I can beat most people at maths. And so that keeps my brain very sharp, solving difficult equations. I don't clutter my brain with negative things. I don't have a television, and I don't read newspapers because they're all full of bad news. I have a theory that if you if you constantly pester yourself with negative issues, because they're the easiest things to find and grumble about, your brain will create negative chemicals which will impair your health badly. So that's one of my theories. I may be completely wrong, but I tend to believe it. Tend to avoid grumbling about things. No point in grumbling, because half the time you can't do anything about it. It's best to try and be cheerful, laugh a lot. And sometimes you get illnesses. We can't avoid that. But only worry about it if you can do something about it. I had a shock some years ago. When was it? About 4 years ago. I went to the doctor with earache in my left ear. And it turned out to be nothing to do with my ear, but he said I got serious cancer, so I had to solve it. So thanks to the doctor, the problem was solved, and I don't worry about it anymore. My number 3 of needs, which is something you need to aspire to from an early age, soon when you start working, is to be able to own your house or flat by the time at least by the time you retire from work. You don't want to be paying rent when you retire, because that consumes a lot of money and gives you a lot of worry. Having somewhere safe and sound to live in, that's number 3. Number 4, I consider that you should enjoy your work. Find employment which suits your personality, your education, your sort of characteristics, and in the process of working you will meet nice people, you'll hopefully enjoy what you do. If you don't enjoy it, change it. Go and do something different. And you may have to make several changes before you find something that's really suits you best. And in that process, I suggest to younger people, you should try and have a 5-year look ahead objective. So where do you want to be in your job in 5 years' time? Do you want to be a manager? Do you want to be a director? If you have a plan, then you can try and stick to the plan. At the same time, as time passes, there might be things in the plan that won't work or can't work, and you have to modify it. But it's always a good idea to have a plan in your employment. Otherwise, you can drift along and miss opportunities. Number 5, I think you need. It tends to go with number 1. I think it's a good idea to have a sense of humour and a lot of patience, because sense of humour and laughing tends to solve problems and make problems less severe. Patience enables you to absorb difficult situations, painful situations, and if you can be patient, eventually the problems get solved. No problem lasts forever. And you mustn't be too impatient to try and solve the problem. Some solutions come quickly, some can take a long time. Sometimes in difficult situations, you should think about saying sorry and I was wrong. A lot of people can't do that. Particularly in India, as you know, in the East, losing face can be terrible.
Yes.
But it's something that people should try and do. And about difficult situations, sometimes, let's say it's a difficult situation in a marriage, and you'll have a row or you'll have a fight with your wife, and one of the things to bear in mind is that you can win a battle but you don't want to lose the war in the process.
Mm-hmm.
Because losing the war can lead to a divorce or something very serious. So those are basically my list of needs, and so they roughly fit on one hand.
Mm-hmm.
Now, wants is a different subject altogether. I tend to say that needs will create wealth, spiritual wealth and physical wealth and money wealth. Wants will consume time wastefully. They'll give you unhappiness. They're temporary. They appeal to ego, self-importance, and often in the end don't give you pleasure. It's usually a short-term thing. And typical examples is I want to buy the next model of car with the next biggest engine, or I want to buy the next expensive wristwatch, or something which is sort of generally money-based, and once you've acquired it, it loses its shine. And we all have different wants. Some people tend to be highly motivated by material things. Other people tend to possibly be motivated by more philosophical things and possibly spiritual things. So I tend to be of that kind. I'm not overly worried about material things. Obviously, there are things I do enjoy, and so that's roughly my thoughts on the needs and wants.
Beautiful. So can we ask questions now?
Of course.
So I have a question, and you talked about don't clog your head up with negative thoughts which come to you, and try to stay active and have a sense of humor. So what is the technique that you actually use to do that? How do you keep them away? Do you meditate? You can share a little bit on that.
Well, I'm a fairly simple person. I just generally try to have a cheerful attitude all the time, because I enjoy the things I do. I don't try and put myself in situations where I'm pressurized to make me grumpy or dissatisfied or unhappy. And I mix with nice people. One of my big pleasures in life is Aikido, which I might have mentioned before.
Yes.
And they're a lovely bunch of people. I go to about 3 different clubs in London, and there's typically about 10 people in each class each time, and they're all cheerful, jolly people who curious thing about Aikido is that everybody wants to help everybody else.
Yes.
Regardless of their grade. So that's the sort of thing, and I avoid listening to negative things. And I avoid reading negative things. I don't like watching violent films, for instance, with war and killing. I might have done that when I was young, but not anymore. There's too much sorrow and misery in the world to be entertained by it.
Beautiful. That's great. And I so agree with you. I stopped watching TV 10 years ago or reading newspapers, or maybe more than 10 years ago. And people ask me, how do you keep in touch? I said, whatever needs to come into my reality will find its way. And if it's the weather, then how in these countries we check the weather all the time. That's probably the only thing I do on my phone. But otherwise, you're absolutely right. And going back to Aikido and the philosophy of Aikido, I know that it's not just a martial art, but it's also a way of thinking. And like the Japanese talk about the Daruma doll, that you fall, but then you bounce back like a Daruma doll. And I'm sure in your life as well, you might have had some very difficult circumstances, like you mentioned, the death of your friend or the passing away of your wife, and those people tend to say psychologists or psychotherapists are pretty debilitating things: death, divorce, loss of a loved one. How, if you don't mind sharing, how did you overcome that? And was Aikido helpful, or did you use something else as well?
Well, Aikido came, so it came after my wife's death, I think about 6 to 9 months after, because when I came back to London, I was thinking, what shall I do in the evenings? And it was winter time. And I didn't want to be stuck indoors. I wanted to go, and I had done some Aikido in the 1960s, so I knew a little bit about it then. And interestingly, the guy that created Aikido was a man who developed it between about 1920 and about 1960. So it's not an old samurai type thing. It's based on Judo, Jiu-Jitsu and Kendo, all of which he was an expert, this man. And he was an army man, and he spent time in China with the war between China and Japan. And I dare say he, being a soldier and fighting, he probably killed quite a fair number of people. And at the end of the war, I think he was incarcerated in China for a while. Mm-hmm. During that time, he, you might say, meditated regularly on his situation. And after the war, when he came back to Japan, he decided to change his thinking completely and develop the what he called Aiki-Jitsu at that time. It then got different names. It's now called Aikido. Ai means love or harmony. Ki means energy and power. And Do means to practice. So his mission in life became the promotion of peace and love. And a lot of people have written about his thoughts on that. Indeed, he has himself. He became a very spiritual man, much loved by the people that he taught. And one of his first students was a guy called Kenji Tamiki, who later split away from Morihei Ueshiba, the originator, and set up his own version of Aikido, which is what I follow, because it's more structured. And the kind Tamiki Aikido you can do anywhere in the world. You go to a club in Australia or Canada, and you'll be doing exactly the same syllabus there. Whereas what they call the traditional Aikido people, whoever runs the club does his own thing, so it's not consistent. It's very irregular. So those things help me keep cheerful and happy.
Nice. That's beautiful. So basically what you're saying is really find something of passion and value that you can practice regularly and stay consistent with, which helps mind, body and soul.
Yes, with other people.
Yes. Okay.
In the earlier days, people did ballroom dancing. And the element of touch, physical touch, I think is very powerful. And Aikido is all about touch. Everything we do is touch. And unfortunately, modern dancing, you've tended to have lost that. Mm-hmm. And I think it's something that people have, well, they don't know they've lost it. They never had it.
Yes. Very true. Does anyone else have questions, or can I continue? I just want to be Harish or Joel.
Oh, no, I'm fine. Just keep listening.
Yeah. I have one question for you. You talked about your passion for mathematics.
Yes.
And does it have any correlation with the passion that you're following now, there seems to be some kind of a science behind Aikido also. It's very mathematical. Sometimes I find it when you explained to me last time.
Well,
There's some kind of precision in both. That's why.
there might be a commonality in the sense that both are not religious, in the sense that there's a doctrine, and they're both not political. And also, as you know, mathematics tends to be a subject which has a definite result. It's either 1 + 1 = 2, it's not 2.5. And when I practice Aikido, you practice the moves as correctly as possible, and then you get the right result.
So Alan, my next question to you, you talked about, enjoying your work and loving what you do, and that's so essential. But sometimes when we are younger or we have a need where, you need money to eat, to survive, or to have a roof over your head, you take on jobs that are not necessarily things that you love. How do you then, or maybe you can share, if you had such an experience, how did you navigate to doing what you love? What would you, if you can share
Well,
that?
yes, it's a good question. There have been jobs I've done which let's say, significant parts of that job, that employment that I haven't loved or enjoyed as much as I could or should. But I take it that you have to take the rough with the smooth sometimes. Everything in life can't be good and easy. So I tolerate the lesser side of it with patience, and just wait until this particular experience, it might take 1 year, 2 years, is past. Then hopefully the next job is a better one, because in my kind of work, oil and gas, I've worked all over the world in short-term and long-term projects. Sometimes I've had to work with some of the most worst rubbish people you could imagine, and you wonder how on earth they got employed, and you have to work with them somehow.
Mm-hmm.
Places like about 2 years ago, I was working in a different office of our company, and I had the great pleasure, of working with the 2 engineers from the clients. You might have heard the company Aramco.
Yes.
In Saudi
Arabia.
One guy was from Venezuela, the other was a local Arab.
Oh.
These 2 guys were fantastic. They were the best technically qualified and best attitude people I've ever worked with, I would say. It was a terrific pleasure. The first mile is easy, but to go the second mile to help someone is hard.
Beautiful. So I want to
agree.
say that this feels like we're on a journey of God's wonderful railway, and as co-passengers on this journey, on this train, today has been such a revelation. And Alan, you've been so inspiring. Your words of wisdom are something I'm going to cherish and practice. And I want to thank you for inspiring us at the Happy Cafe. I hope that one day this will be a live session in connection with humans and not a virtual one like we have today. And I thank you from the bottom of my heart. And Harish, thank you for introducing us to Alan and for sharing your wisdom. I want to thank all of the sponsors, the fans, and the people who have supported us in this journey, the speakers, the inspirers, and the people who've had these heart-to-heart, soul-sync conversations. It really means a lot to us, and every word of wisdom that you share on this journey of life is so important in enhancing another human being. The whole idea behind a happy cafe is to be able to touch one human at a time. And if we all did that, then the 7 billion of us on this beautiful planet Earth would be a miracle of healing, of compassion, and true love for each other. So let's go around changing one human at a time. And thank you for being a part of Happy Cafe. A Happy Cafe has been a project that's been really close to my heart, and it's a wonderful showcase of being able to celebrate our authentic self, our true appreciation of our essence as human beings. A good group of friends have come together for the last few Saturdays and Sundays. We have been showcasing stories called Soul Sync Saturdays and Soul Sync Sundays, where we talk about life experiences and what really matters to us as we go through this pandemic as well as through life. So please join us at our YouTube channel, our Facebook, and our Instagram. Please like and share. The buttons are right below this video. And this one episode is all about wants versus needs. And I think it's a great way to showcase what we are all experiencing right now.